2020, the Quirky Recovery. This is Emerson Schwarzkopf from Stone Update, and I'm here to talk about one of the strangest years ever for our industry and in general. It was a year of masks. It was a year of shutdowns. It was a year of protest. And yes, a year of almost no toilet paper. The odd thing is, however, with all of that, you probably ended up with a better year than you could have imagined some 8 months ago. 2020 started out great, went through a lousy spring, and then bounced back and more as the year rolled on. And there's a way we can track that. That's through the imports of dimensional hard surfaces to the United States. The granite, marble, travertine, and other natural stone, along with the man-made quartz surfaces and porcelain, that's ready for fabrication and installation. Now, I don't buy and sell the goods, but I watch what's coming through U.S. ports of entry. One of Stone Update's digital publications is Hard Surface Report, a monthly collection of import data on dimensional hard surfaces. It's available for free, and I'll tell you how to subscribe at the end of this report, and details what's coming into the United States. We publish statistics, which means a bunch of graphs, charts, and numbers. To be honest, it's easy at first look to get into a state of MEGO, or my eyes glaze over. Much like reading an article about the World Bank or instructions for an Internal Revenue Service worksheet. Those import numbers are very important because they can give us a reasonably accurate measurement of the business health of hard surfaces in the United States. And how does that work? When it comes to hard surfaces, the USA is much more of a consumer than a producer of hard surfaces. We certainly quarry natural stone and make plenty of quartz surfaces and porcelain in this country, but it's nowhere near the total of surfaces we import for fabrication and installation. Well, how much more? That answer gets a bit tricky, and it involves government reports, some detective work, and, well, some educated guesses. These are my numbers. You may have different ideas. Don't take these as 100% fact, but as a good guide. We'll break these down into 3 areas: natural stone, ceramic, which is representative for porcelain, and quartz surfaces, and look at how much imports make up the total volume used in the United States. All these are based on 2019 because that's the last year where we have data for all 12 months. Let's take natural stone first. Now, if we count every bit of dimensional natural stone quarried in the United States, we'd see a close to even break between domestic production and imports. If we refine the selection to slabs, panels, and tiles, and take out flagging and other architectural stone, we see that imports made up more than 90% of the natural stone used for countertops, cladding, and other applications. Ceramic isn't as dramatic, but nearly 7 out of every 10 square feet used in the United States came from a foreign source. This will change in coming years as more porcelain production, specifically in large format products, opens in the United States. Quartz surfaces are the hardest to pin down. Manufacturing capacity in this country is constantly increasing, and U.S. producers are shy about revealing production figures. Patching together the bits and pieces publicly available, 3 out of every 4 square feet of quartz surfaces fabricated in the United States were foreign made, and Like porcelain, the share of U.S. products will increase with the addition of new factories and expanded production lines. You can see that import numbers can tell us a lot about hard surface use in the United States, as foreign products clearly make up the majority of material consumed in a year. Imports dominate the dimensional use of natural stone. Imports also make up about 70% or more of quartz surface and ceramic porcelain use, but more of the materials will be produced within U.S. borders in the coming years. Foreign import data can reveal how we're doing as an industry. Let's have those numbers tell us the story of 2020 and how in a matter of a few months it went from bust to boom. One thing to remember, there's a lag time between when material is shipped from its country of origin to its arrival at a U.S. port of entry. Unless you have an insanely wealthy client, slabs aren't flown in by DHL or FedEx. This is transport by sea. You can get into some speed shipping from Europe in the 10-day range, but a good rule of thumb is basically 3 weeks transatlantic and 6 to 8 weeks trans-Pacific for container ships. Let's start with natural stone imports. There's a real downward skin in February, but this isn't COVID-19 related. As you can see in comparing this year with 2018 and 2019, shipments always take a dip in February. And while COVID cases began appearing worldwide in February, it's going to take a few more months for any effect on imports because of that lag time in shipping. 2 months later, at the end of April, we can see some change that's out of the ordinary. March 2020 seems a bit behind previous years, but April indicated a real slowdown in demand as the growth curve flattened. Advance 2 months and you can clearly see that demand is off. June is normally one of the high spots for natural stone shipments, but 2020 is off by a third from 2019. The pattern of shipment lag time, those 2 months, indicates a slowdown from the global lockdown in the spring. Here's where the 2-month lag turns again and shows the stunning recovery by natural stone imports to meet market demand. June ended up being the low point as August 2020 shot past August 2019's level. October is the final month available right now for 2020 imports, but it's clear to see a full recovery from the COVID slowdown earlier this year. 2020 is still 6.8% behind 2019 in year-to-date shipments, but that's an amazing step up from being 19% behind in June. 2020 could finish with natural stone imports besting 2019 and 2018 levels. Meanwhile, with quartz surfaces, 2020 imports hinted early at a banner year, although some of the large lead over 2019 shipments came due to what I call the tariff effect, and we'll talk about that later. 2020 imports didn't take the usual February plunge either. Lockdown problems started making an impact as the hot growth rate in March cooled off in April. Overall numbers still look good for quartz surfaces, but the bottom dropped out of the quartz surface imports with June 2020 at least half of the same month in 2019, although tariffs likely made the difference larger than it should have, and again, we'll get to that later. As with natural stone, the turnaround kicked in during the summer. The general sense in the industry was that remodeling brought fabrication back in late spring, and the growth curve indicates restocking to meet demand. That growth curve hit a gentler rate in October, but demand continues to grow into late fall. It's unlikely that quartz surface imports dropped at year's end, as happened in 2018 and 2019. Porcelain began 2020 in much the same way as previous years, with a steep drop in February. Porcelain import trends didn't change much through April. In 2018 and 2019, shipment totals varied through April, with a general upswing in May. Not in 2020, although the downturn didn't last as long as in natural stone and quartz surfaces. The turnaround came a month early for porcelain, as it hit bottom for 2020 in May and began a steep climb out in June. Year-to-date totals, however, remain behind 2019 by more than 14%. The good news continued for porcelain imports through August. Monthly and year-to-date totals for 2020 still lag behind 2019, although this is, once again, due to a tariff effect. The growth leveled off in September and October, but porcelain, like natural stone and quartz surfaces, remained strong. In a strange year, all three took a serious dive in the spring and made a quirky but strong recovery in summer and fall. We can see from hard surface imports that the COVID-19 drop didn't last long. Fabricators and installers gained work as the lockdown fueled a remodeling boom. Natural stone made the biggest turnaround, but all surfaces advanced through the fall. Tracking down the volume of imports helps us understand market demand on this side of the border, but the key indicator for exporters is the value of shipments to the United States. This spring bust and summer-fall boom occur here too, but the degree of success is a different story. When we talk about value, it's not the same as the price paid by a fabricator or any other supplier, distributor, anyone along the chain. Customs value is the stated worth of a product when it hits the dock at U.S. ports of entry, and any duties or tariffs are assessed on that amount. It's not the base value, not the price, of a material that comes into the United States. The total value on all imported hard surfaces through October takes a similar track to the volume of materials. At 392.6 million, October 2020 imports are above the totals for October 2019, and the 8% drop in year-to-date imports for 2020 is on par with January-October volume shortfalls. To get a different perspective, let's compare the last 4 separate Octobers to see the import mix. Last October is well ahead of the month's total since 2017, and it's easy to see the import value growth, quartz and surfaces and porcelain, and the decline in granite. By the way, this chart appears every month in Hard Surface Report as the number, giving a quick comparative snapshot of all hard import sectors. Until now, we've been dealing with very large numbers, and it does seem pretty abstract. So we'll break the data down to what I call value per unit. It's a simple formula. We take the customs value of a surface category before any duties are assessed and divide it by the volume. This gives us a base figure that's easy to understand. And remember, this isn't the price charged along the distribution chain, which then gets into duties, freight, and markup. We'll start with all natural stone, where the common volume unit is a metric ton. Here are the monthly totals for October since 2017. Notice that on the left, volume shows a nice growth rate in 4 years. Total value is more unsettled. Plug the data into the value per unit formula, and while import volume grew, the value dropped 8.4% by 2020. It's not surprising to see growth in use if the base value was less than 4 years ago. Just in case you might think there's an odd type of stone or rogue exporting country deflating the value, let's take a separate look at granite and marble. Together, the two types make up more than 73% of all U.S. dimensional natural stone imports. The two biggest pieces of natural stone imports really exceed the overall 8.4% drop. From 2017 to 2020, the October value per unit for granite fell by 11%, while marble's value per unit sunk by nearly 30%. Quartz surfaces using the same 4 consecutive Octobers are a bit calmer, rising 5.1% from 2017 to 2020. Here, and with porcelain, volume is measured in square feet. Porcelain, meanwhile, slipped a bit after a small bump up in value per unit in 2019. Both quartz surfaces and porcelain didn't skew wildly by 2020. However, there's more to the story when it comes to last year's Quirky Recovery. And now here's where tariffs come into the picture. I've suggested that some odd things happened with U.S. hard surface imports in the past few years because of tariffs, or duties, or taxes, or however you want to think of them. But did the actions do anything to affect our industry's bounce back? There comes a time in a presentation like this where there's a horribly complicated chart. We've arrived at that point, and please bear with me. Hard surfaces from China were the target of several tariffs, beginning in 2018 with what's called a 301 tariff that was levied on all Chinese imports. That tariff went up to 25% in the fall of 2019. 2 investigations by the U.S. government led to an additional unfair trade tariffs on hard surfaces based on subsidized production in China and selling below U.S. market value. A complaint from Cambria led to the basic 300% tariff on Chinese quartz surfaces that was finalized in 2019. A petition from a group of 8 U.S. tile manufacturers led to the rather astronomical tariff placed on Chinese porcelain. Separate unfair trade complaints from Cambria led to tariffs on quartz surfaces from 2 other countries, India and Turkey, in 2020. However, that federal investigation led to much smaller single-digit tariffs. The 301 tariffs appeared to have slowed down natural stone imports from China. Comparing the January through October totals from 2017, before the first round of 301 tariffs, to similar imports in 2020, well after the full 25% went into effect, Chinese shipments have dropped by 1/3 in volume. Overall imports have dropped by a slower rate, which means that other countries are picking up the slack. Explaining what happened with quartz surfaces and porcelain is a trickier task. The federal government put temporary tariffs in place roughly 8 months before the rates became final, and the effect was to abruptly cut off Chinese imports at that point. There was a window of a few months between the start of the investigations and imposing the temporary tariffs, causing a spike in imports to beat the new rates. With quartz slabs on the left, there were 2 major areas of increased imports in volume that I've circled. One came in summer 2018 to beat the possibility of temporary tariffs, and another occurred a year later, with a temporary 2 to 3 month window where Chinese imports avoided the large tariffs through a technicality. On the right, there's a similar spike with porcelain in the summer of 2019. That same pattern of spikes appeared with values of quartz surface imports during the summers of 2018 and 2019, and porcelain in 2019. Now let's take a look again at that monthly value per unit per square foot for both quartz surfaces and porcelain in October 2017 before any of the tariffs, and in October 2020 after all tariffs were in place and the industry recovered from the COVID shutdown. Quartz surfaces went up, while porcelain went down. But did the tariffs limit overall import volumes and possibly put the brakes on an even larger recovery? The simple answer? No. Other countries stepped up to fill the void left by China for quartz surfaces and porcelain, while India's and Turkey's quartz surfaces came back after tariffs didn't even hit 10%. Imported quartz surface values increased by just over 5%, but monthly October volume increased by 34.3% without China. And porcelain imports values dropped 4.7%, and volume increased by 23% after China left the market. When we put a value on hard surface imports, the total is more than $3 billion annually, and that's before we add any markup after materials leave the docks at ports of entry. Quartz surfaces and porcelain have made the biggest gains in overall value since 2017, and the tariffs on imported surfaces changed the source, as with China, but didn't slow down the increase in lower value goods to compete with U.S. produced products. Thank you for sharing this view of the unlikely industry recovery of 2020. I'm hoping the upward trend continues through 2021, and with a lot less drama. I also wanted to note that all the photography in this presentation came from Unsplash.com. I'm not getting a promotional fee for this because, like that stellar work, this promo comes at no charge. I also invite you to get in on the action with U.S. imports every month with Hard Surface Report, our exclusively online publication detailing shipments coming through our ports of entry. Like everything else we offer in the Sewn Update family of products, it's available for free. Go to www.hardsurfacereport.com and click on the Subscribe tab. Thank you again for your time and attention. Have a pleasant and profitable day.